With the resounding success of Operation Undertaker, a new operation called Operatia Inversia, or Operation Inversion in English, was approved by Omega Group on November 9th and would be led by Valentina. The goal of the operation was to weaponize Ethereum and anything they could find within the Dark Ether to win the Cold War. Controlling the bridges between their world and the Dark Ether would allow them to harness and weaponize to heights the world had never seen before. An Ethereum arms race would begin ensuing between East and West, and thanks to Operation Undertaker, the dimensional veil between this world and the Dark Ether was weakened significantly enough to enable further experimentation with the other dimension, giving Omega a massive lead so far in the arms race. Locating an area of particular dimensional fertility in the province Quang Chi, Vietnam, the USSR at Omega's behest immediately contacted and agreed upon the site with the communist Vietnamese government, the former American Firebase ripcord. The construction of a facility here began on November 11th and was completed a few months later on February 10th, 1985. This new facility was to be referred to as Outpost 25 and would be overseen by Peck. In the coming months, Omega would rapidly increase their understanding of Ethereum thanks to the experiments occurring here. The most significant was a stabilized anomaly contained within a portal chamber. Though not considered a true gateway, it marks the first portal controlled by humans on record since Project Endstation. At the moment, he knew he was successful. Peck goaded his assistant, Dr. Kulkley, and believed he had surpassed even Dr. Vogel's work.
Test number 32. Dr. Kulkley, you may proceed. Activating resonator. Beginning magnetic amplification. Dimensional barrier identified. Beginning particle distortion. Barrier membrane integrity at 50%. Amplification is still approaching the limits prematurely. Increasing voltage output from Ethereum crystal. It's working. Membrane integrity at 40%. Amplification has reached maximum safety parameters. Let it ride, Dimitri. Let it ride. Increasing voltage output. Amplification exceeding safety parameters. They're shutting it down. You touch that button, I'll have you gut it like a fish and fed to your comrades in Solyanka soup. Membrane integrity down to 10%. You mudak! You get us killed. Great. Adjusting distortion frequency to pattern echo 4. My God. Eat your heart out, Dr. Vogel. We'll see who history remembers.
Unfortunately, this abusive relationship between Peck and his assistant would only worsen as time progressed. Omega began enlisting soldiers to be sent into the Dark Ether, many of whom were past criminals or devout patriots they could exploit. As Omega's Ethernauts returned from the other dimension with their Ethereum crystals, and often without their sanity, Kulkley set to work trying to make a new Ethereum weapon, the Ray K-84, modeled after the classic Russian Kalashnikov family of rifles. Peck would not only insult Kulkley for this, but would also steal the design for himself. So yeah, Omega were hard at work in extracting crystals from the Dark Ether to use for technology and weaponry, allowing massive strides in science and technology, giving them a massive one-up against Requiem at this current moment in time. Meanwhile, in neighboring Laos, an Omega Group captain, Sergei Ravanov, was sent in alongside Colonel Lev Kravchenko to investigate a small dimensional breach that had occurred there, which we see take place in Apocalypse Onslaught. In his official report, he claims that Omega Group's asset in the area was dead when they arrived on the scene. In his personal diary, however, he told a very different story. After arriving on site, they found a Laotian contact, but he was not only alive, but had fended off the outbreak. Kravchenko ordered the man to be restrained and informed Ravanov that Valentina had an experiment for them to carry out. They then proceeded to sample the brain fluids of the dead infected and eject them into the contact's head. He died screaming, then kept screaming. After this event, Ravanov began having significant doubts about Omega Group. He was a Soviet through and through, but this was not his Russia. Valentina, amidst these cruel experiments, met with Dr. Kulkley under Peck's nose. Recognizing the hatred he held for his superior, Valentina realized that Kulkley could be an asset in furthering her own plans. Kulkley sourced her the schematics for technology that would allow her to measure the dimensional stability at any place of her choosing.
Is this everything? Surely there is more. I assure you, Dr. Valentina, this is everything.
Research on membrane permutations? What about the particle distortion modules?
Everything you need on targeted dimensional breaching is there.
Отлично. Have it delivered to this address.
You're not taking it with you?
Is there a problem with my order?
No. I just thought...
Thinking is a dangerous thing, is it not, comrade? Have it delivered to the address. Make sure you are not discovered by Peck.
Believe me, he is half of the reason I am doing this.
And the other half.
Why, for the good of the motherland, of course.
Of course. For the motherland.
Knowing this device was key to releasing her father and Task Force Baldra, she had it sent to Berlin, where she too would shortly go to meet a mysterious contact. Ravenov, seeing the increasing intensity of the experiments in Vietnam, knew he could no longer sit idly by. He made contact with Agent Maxis and began acting as a mole. He agreed to meet her at the outpost where he would be able to produce vital intelligence on Omega. Having been dark for months and knowing it was a risky operation, Sam decided to contact Weaver via telephone and inform him of what she was about to do. Unfortunately for her, this phone call would be exactly what would put her in harm's way. Being a Requiem phone line, the director heard every word and decided it was a perfect opportunity to advance his plan. He made contact with one of his many secrets, none other than Dr. William Peck, and informed him that Maxis would be arriving at the base. He, however, neglected to mention that Ravenov was her contact in Omega. With Maxis now in custody, he also instructed Peck to directly disobey Kravchenko's orders for a comprehensive interrogation and instead throw her into the dark ether. Additionally, he did not expect her to get out. It's worth noting that, at this time, Peck didn't know who this contact in Requiem was, only that he could potentially secure him safe passage back to the West and give him a clean slate if things at Omega were not to work out in his favor. Peck started to not only interrogate Samantha, but also started torturing her with no result before proceeding with the director's request, throw Maxis into the other dimension. However, at the moment he did this, an outbreak immediately began at the facility, with the phase consuming the area between the village at the bottom of the Firebase and the facility itself. Requiem later believed this to be a result of none other than Maxis, as she grew a multitude of psychotronic powers whilst in the dark ether, so we can now assume that those people that Omega were studying with psychotronic powers likely gained them from the dark ether, potentially being in contact with the dark ether entities. Whilst she was strong enough to resist Peck's interrogation fairly well, the dark ether preyed on her weaknesses. Having been thrown in there, her rage began to build up. In her efforts to survive in the barren land, she even went so far as to butcher a group of Omega agents in her sleep, whilst her memory on those events is hazy.
When I opened my eyes, there was blood on my hands. I stared at it, not knowing if it was mine. Then I saw the bodies. Omega soldiers. They looked like victims of a frenzied attack. An attack that continued even after they were dead. I have a knife. I do not remember where it came from. I just want to go home. This is a dream. A bad dream. It has to be. That's what I tell myself. Even if it isn't true. What is happening? Why is it happening? I don't know. I don't know anything. I am lost. Please find me. Please.
With Maxis captured, Ravenov contacts Grigory Weaver using the same phone line that Maxis previously had, explaining to him the situation and warning him that they are always listening. Ravenov implores Weaver to send the strike team in. After discussing it with the other senior staff, Weaver does just that.
If any harm comes to her, I will kill you myself.
Operation Lost Property officially begins, in an effort to try and rescue Samantha Maxis, the little lost girl. Arriving at the facility on June 15th, 1984, Peck contacts the strike team over radio and makes a bargain. Turn the facility power back on and he would give up Maxis. After doing just that, however, Peck chided the team for their incredible stupidity. Maxis was in the dark ether and totally out of his or their reach. Now that they had restored power, he had transferred all of his research via satellite back to Omega in Russia. Consulting Ravenov, he informed the strike team that Peck kept a truth serum in order to interrogate Ethernauts who had returned without their sanity, in order to get some semblance of a series of events from them. The strike team mixed the serum and gave it to Peck, causing him to explain that in order to recover Maxis, they would need the codes to the portal's mainframe and her dimensional tracking ID. Eventually obtaining these, they restarted the portal, only to find that the truth serum had worn off, and Peck had double-crossed them yet again. Thankfully, Requiem had an ace up its sleeve. Designed for use in Operation Threshold, this secret weapon of Requiem was an orbital laser that used pure Ethereum to pull high-value targets straight from the dark ether into our world. Looking onto Sam, the laser blasted the portal chamber and retrieved her. She seemed visibly disorientated as she stumbled out, with a purple glisten seen reflecting in her eyes. Maxis survived the shadowy hellscape long enough to reflect on herself and her path, scavenging weapons and gear to form a new but nostalgic outfit. On their way to escape the facility, the strike team came face to face with their first true elder god in the village, a being known as the Order. Managing to defeat it, they escaped with Sam just as Raptor 1 arrived. Ravenov informed Maxis that he would stay behind in order to carry out ops in the field, as his cover had not yet been blown with Omega, informing her of an operation taking place in the Ural Mountains. Back at Outpost 25, a detachment of Omega soldiers led by Valentina arrived to meet with Peck. To his surprise, Kravchenko also arrived to Vietnam. After having expressed his discontent with Peck's actions, Kravchenko asked him to show a demonstration of his commitment to Omega. Kravchenko then pulled out a knife and cut one of Peck's eyes, just as he did to Weaver prior. Upon returning to Requiem headquarters, Maxis was placed in quarantine before being tested. While Requiem estimated she had only spent roughly 48 hours in the dark ether, physiological and metabolic data from the tests indicated she spent several months in the other dimension, like she claimed. They also noted changes in her eyes that were now purple. Requiem also kept her in isolation as they believed she was responsible for the outburst of Ethereum in Outpost 25. She was subsequently questioned by Carver, Strauss, and Gray, who were interested with her experience in the dark ether. Requiem seized the radio she used to contact the Requiem strike teams. Weaver, who visited her often, decided to give her a female Rottweiler to keep her company. At some point around this time, Carver had started to look into the director's identity, keeping Weaver in the loop with whatever he found. Unbeknownst to him, the director was all too aware of his snooping.